Can you tell me what Barbara Jordan's legacy and public service means to you?
Well, I had the privilege of knowing her a little bit, being from Houston and living not too far from her. It was one of the most remarkable experiences I think that all of us had in our community. Just imagine a person who's coming up from pure poverty, coming up in a segregated society, segregated schools, and then achieving the excellence in education and in politics as she did. It was remarkable for our community, and it was something that all of us walked around bragging about. We know Barbara, we know her, you know, that sort of thing. And it was very inspirational. It gave the kind of impetus to young women, particularly, that they could go get an education and achieve. Because she came up at a time that women just didn't have a whole lot of rights. And it was remarkable for her to be able to make the achievements and the strides that she was able to make.
Absolutely. It seems like it was an inspiration for you. And you've been a public servant for over 50 years in the Texas Legislature. How do you feel about reaching this milestone? Do you remember the first day of your first campaign or your first day as a legislator?
I remember both of them.
Please.
Let me just tell you something that was remarkable. I happened to run at a time, and let me just set the stage. Some of you may remember this. Sister Farenthold was the only woman in the House of Representatives, and she decided to run for governor. And that particular year of 1972 seemed to become the year of the woman, and here's why. Roe versus Wade was in the Supreme Court of the United States. There was an equal rights amendment being floated around the states to be ratified to give women equal rights. Women were beginning to feel like that they have more to contribute than lick stamps and envelopes and help men get elected. That they had something that extra or more that they can contribute than those particular things. And women began, there was about just a handful of women who ran for office and got elected. It was new. We didn't get the money contribution-wise that men got, but women rallied behind us, and it made it so significant to be able to have women who supported other women at that particular juncture in society, and it was just phenomenal.
Would you say that was what spurred you into politics, or what wanted you to get into politics and become a representative?
When I saw Barbara Jordan and I saw other women who had been in political office and things, I say that I can do just as well as another man, if not better.
That's right. That's right.
And I brought something extra to the table. From a woman's vantage point, I brought issues that women were familiar with, and they were kitchen table issues that women needed to have addressed. And I figured that I had a little more to offer.
Yeah. We talked behind closed doors a little bit about, you know, your sort of, growing up in Houston. You were born in Booth, Texas, and raised in Houston. Tell us about what it's like growing up in Houston. Has your community experienced significant gentrification like we've seen here in the east side of Austin? How does upbringing influence how you represent the 141th district that encompasses Northeast Houston?
I was reared in Houston, and I ran in the area where I was reared. I still live on the same street that I was raised on in Houston. I live around persons that I went to elementary school with. My children are friends with their children. My grandchildren are friends with their grandchildren. We still see each other in the community. And I had an opportunity to run within that area.
That's powerful. Yeah. Well, I want to transition the focus of our conversation to your career in the Texas Legislature. To begin, you've authored 47 bills in this legislature session, mind you. Over the course of your career, which piece of legislation are you most proud of?
Oh, there were so many. When I first came to the legislature, I had no idea that I had a bucket list of things. And I just thought this because I had that list, I could get them all done. And I didn't realize that you had to work with people to get it done. But I've always been interested in issues that impact families, children, schools, and the aged. Mm-hmm. And I say that because when I look at the aged, there are so many issues about them and so many things that they need. Mm-hmm. And somebody have to look at the little dogs. And I think that I'm one of those persons who have to look at after the little dogs. And if I may expand just a little bit.
Absolutely.
For instance, I passed some legislation that dealt with special needs. These are persons who get in nursing homes and they get Social Security to cover part of their expenses. They are allowed to keep a small portion of that money. That money is utilized to buy deodorant, shampoo, get a haircut, maybe a pair of tennis shoes. And many of these persons don't have families who have monies that can really buy things or contribute to them. And sometimes they don't have families at all. So from 2007, I dealt with Governor Perry, who is a good friend of mine. And he and I fought over special needs. You can stop me if I'm going too long.
No.
But anyway, we was fighting over the special needs money. And he had a bill that he needed to pass, and it was just really critical. And I needed $39 million to raise this special, because this was statewide. It sounds like a lot of money, but it was only about $2 or $3 extra per month per person. And so he said, Senfronia, you got a point of order, and you finna kill my bill. I said, you damn right. He said, this bill is real critical to the people of Texas. I said, and that money, that $2 more money is real critical to those people, in nursing homes. He says, we got to have this money. I said, Governor, I got to have $39 million. And unless I get $39 million, I don't give a goddamn if that bill dies. Now listen, I knew I was pushing the envelope, but at some point I know I might end up losing that battle. But I was tough. He called me back, Senfronia. I said, you got $39 million? You know, I'm getting really tough now. So finally he says, what do you want that money for? And I talked to him, and he and I had a lengthy conversation. He said, okay, I get it. He says, and he said, I understand what you're trying to go. I'm going to give you the money, but I'll put it in the budget, and I'll give it at a certain period of time, but I do need you to help me here. And I said, Governor, I'm willing to help you. So we got that money. From 2007 until last session, it took me that long to raise that money again. Mm-hmm. I only got them $2.50 per person per month. It doesn't sound like much to you or I, but if a person want to go to a vending machine and get a candy bar, or Coca-Cola, that's heaven to them to get that little extra. If they need a pair of socks for their feet to stay warm, that's a manna from heaven. It means so much to them. In this session of the legislature, I would like for the legislature to give us some psychiatric, geriatric psychiatrists to work with them, because people need to have an outlet of social and mental services so that they can have a better quality of life. And that's the reason why I know I'm going over and over and over that I'm pushing the brain bill. Because I think that if we learn more about the brain, you can stop me when you want to, but don't stop me now. That's the reason why that I've been, for 6 years, I've been trying to get the Senate to pass the Brain Institute bill. I believe that the more that we're able to find out about the brain, we're able to develop protocols and treatments and give people a quality of life on the front end of life as well as the back end of life. Wouldn't it be a miracle to be able to find the gene or something in the brain that's there that we can discover, that we can cure bipolar, schizophrenia? I guarantee if we find out how to get rid of wrinkles, I bet you we'll be able to do a whole lot of things. But the autism, to improve the quality of life. But let me tell you something that's more important that goes along with that. Can you imagine the scientists that would be coming to Texas? Can you imagine the curriculum that would be expanding in medical schools and other areas of our universities for students to learn and to learn more about the human body and to be able to not only better take care of yourself, but to be able to have a higher quality of life? I would love to find that gene that's keeping me fat, to be able to discover it and be able to do a little more control over it. You see what I mean? But the investment is so important. And the reason that I love Rick Perry, he in 2007 invested in cancer research. And because of that, we've been able to find so many cures, protocols, and treatments for people. We know people who get pancreatic cancer many times end up finding it at stage 4, but there are some that are found earlier and they have protocols and treatments for it now that give people a lease on life. And this is what I want to do about brain research. And I cannot get the Texas Senate to agree with me. I cannot get it done. But it would be so much better for all of us if we had a better knowledge of the brain, how it works, and things that we can do to enhance the quality of our life. And I'm going to listen to him now. Thank you very much.
Ms. T, take as much time as you would like.
Thank you.
And
Thank
talk.
you.
We truly
Thank you.
appreciate it, and thank you for your insight.
Sure.
You talked a lot about your time pushing for a bill for getting special needs, accessibility, and then you trying to get your brain bill passed. You spent your career advocating for marginalized communities, and having a career that's over 50 years, you've seen a lot happen in Texas. What have you seen? What progress have you seen in Texas since you entered the legislature? And you talked to us a little bit. Tell us more. What still needs to be improved here?
I think we've made a lot of progress. In that Texas has been broad enough knowledge-wise to enhance itself educationally, medically, and industrially. And we've been able to do a lot of things to help different groups. Let me just take women for instance. In 1973, when I was a freshman, women for the first time in their life, got a chance to have a credit card. They couldn't have a credit card in your name. Couldn't even buy property because you were female. You were discriminated against. We erased all of that. We got rid of all of those sort of things. We were able to bring about coverage of different things of insurance. I was so proud of a young man who came, and he was one of my witnesses. His family was paying a copay of $4,500 a month for oral cancer medicine, just a pill. And they was charging him as though he was taking chemotherapy, and he wasn't. And it took legislation to get them to charge it at a pharmaceutical amount. And we brought the price way down. And he told me, he said, listen, I'm here, I'm available to testify for you. Before I could get to my hearing, he dies, 21 years old. But we were able to pass the legislation to allow that price to go way down, and the family was able to pay about $500 or $600 a month as opposed to $4,500 a month. We were able to make insurance companies pay for 3D mammogram for women. That means if you got a tumor the size of a period that you put behind a sentence when you write, it can detect it and they can see it and they can treat it early, which means less chemotherapy or radiation. Your life expectancy is greater. You don't have to go through a whole lot of hair loss and things of that nature. But more important, you can have a chance to get well quicker. And we have HPV. We make insurance companies pay for that. And I had a problem with that bill. Mm-hmm. The problem I had with that bill was this is a pap smear that detects cervical cancer in women. If we're able to detect it early enough, we're able to save the life of a woman. And I had a senator over there, and I was trying to reason with him, and he was telling, well, I don't know whether or not I want to pass this bill. He had put a stop on my bill, you know, tagged it. And I said, and I was sitting there reasoning with him, and I'm trying to talk to him and tell him about why it was important, how severe cervical cancer would be if a woman had gotten it, how we can stop this and so on. And he just went on and on. He was just going to tag my bill. I took my shoe off. I had my shoe heel in my hand. I was asking one question. I said, are you ready to see your maker? He said, Miss T, I'm taking that tag off. And he did, and he did. We had to pass a legislation for women to have coverage for contraceptives. But when Viagra came online, insurance company put it on there just like that without even in the legislation. They just added it to your coverage. But we always have had situations and problems and things like that. I've been proud to carry legislation for women, sexual assault, domestic violence. We had a problem with runaway, throwaway children. We passed legislation and we started working with Mexico. And as a result of our two nations working together, we were able to do something about runaway children. I passed alimony. We have an abbreviation form of alimony. And my speaker was just wonderful. He said he had gone to the Chamber of Commerce meeting at lunchtime, and he said, listen, as long as I'm speaker, you'll never have to worry about alimony being in this state. And an hour and a half later, I had put an amendment on the bill and got it in place. He said, we were just arguing and fussing about it, and so I came up with this idea. I said, wait a minute. I said, you all want to do something about welfare? Yes, we do. And I said, well, this is what I want to do. If a man has been married to a woman and he decides he want to get a divorce and he want to kick her to the curb, she's been a housewife, she has no skills, no money, no nothing, I think that he should pay her at least 3 years of alimony and get some training where she can take care of herself. And everybody on the floor of the house, yay! And the speaker had just given this speech an hour and a half earlier that we'll never have any alimony. So the amendment goes on to the bill, you know. And I'm glad, so finally, after I'm sitting there and I've got my chest way out, you know, and got this amendment on. And we've been trying for 20 years to get this amendment in place. 20 years. And so we finally got it there. So the speaker finally came and he took a seat beside me. He said, Senfronia, you know this bill is going to have to go to conference committee. I said, oh, yes, sir, Mr. Speaker, I know we'll end up in the conference committee. He said, I'm going to put you on the conference committee. You're not going to go crazy, are you? I said, oh, no, sir. I wouldn't dare do that. So I get on the conference committee. And so the people said, well, what shall we do? I said, well, let me say this. I think that if a man jumps on his wife and beat her up within the first 6 months of filing for a divorce, he ought to pay alimony. So, let's put that on there. And I think, and they said, well, I said, and I think that if she has certain conditions that she can't work or may inhibit her ability to work, then he have to pay alimony a little longer. Let's put that on there. So we know we really kind of built it in a little bit, you know, and we got it in place. And I tell all of these anecdotal situations because I let you know it's not easy to get legislation done. And you got to work with so many different persons and personalities. But the hardest pieces of legislation that I have ever had to fight for, legislation that impact women. That has always been difficult when it comes to something that helps women. But anybody else, boom, 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 just goes through like dynamite.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that answer. And I know that you've been called the champion of women, and you certainly have done a great deal for them in the legislature. I want to talk a little bit more about your fight for healthcare access. Given the recent attacks on women's bodily autonomy, and with the support of the federal government, we've seen attacks on healthcare. What does the future of healthcare look like?
I need to ask Mr. Elon Musk what that is. I just don't have an idea. But I tell you what I would like to see. I would like to see people have an opportunity to be healthy, have information and knowledge of how to better take care of their bodies and themselves, that we have systems within our communities where people can go and get treatments for various things, and we have continuous research going on in critical areas where we would be able to do more to help persons who are suffering like from Parkinson and dementia and Alzheimer's and some of the other things that we're not even familiar with, that we learn about those things, and we can build in a better system, that we continue to have the healthy child, because if we have healthy children, we have healthy minds, we have healthy workers. Those are the systems and things that I would like to see.
Do you think that your fight for healthcare will get harder from now, considering that we have, Elon Musk and Governor Abbott? Do you see yourself having to fight even harder now than you did before?
I do, because we have a lot of people who are uninsured, and the problem with that is they go to the emergency room when they get sick. It may cost us $40 or $100 to see them in a doctor's office, but when they go to that emergency room, it's going to cost us several thousands of dollars for that little short visit. It would be far more economical on the taxpayers of this state if we had a system where they could get some kind of treatment or checkups or health care. It would be more beneficial to all of our pocketbooks.
Thank you so much for your answer. Do you mind if I transition back to education?
I don't.
You've been a very, very busy representative. I'd love to hear about a specific accomplishment that you made early in your career. You traveled to Washington, D.C. at your own expense to convince the U.S. Department of Justice, the Civil Rights Division, and the United States Department of Education to look into discriminatory funding practices against Texas historically black universities. Because of your determination, Prairie View A&M and Texas Southern University received and still receive funding. Can you help us understand what were you thinking and feeling during that experience?
I had the privilege of being a student at Texas Southern University. I wasn't a very smart student, but I majored in biology and minored in chemistry, and I did pretty good in those courses. I taught school. I wanted to be a dentist, but I was married, and I had to go to Tennessee. Because of my ethnicity, I could not have gone to dental school in Texas. So that's why I had to go to Tennessee. My husband told me, he said, listen, I have 5 nieces that are teachers, and teaching is good for you. So I ended up being a teacher. And I was supposed to teach chemistry, but I ended up teaching mathematics at high school. And later, I had to pay for so many books. I said, hell, I don't want to teach this anymore. I'm going to teach special ed where kids don't even have books. I didn't have no idea that what I was really getting into. But in order for me to teach special education, I had to go through that training. It took me 2 years for training. I could not go to the University of Houston because of the state law did not allow me as a black person to attend that university. It was a state university, but I couldn't attend in my own city because I was black. So I traveled to Prairie View. And when I went to Prairie View, I couldn't believe it. I was slopping around there. I'm fighting the fire ants so they won't bite me. And when it got wet, I was slopping in mud. But when I went to the library to do research, it was such poor quality. It had hardly nothing that I could use. I had to send over to Texas A&M and College Station and get peer articles in order to be able to do my thesis, because there was nothing that I could utilize in the library at Prairie View. So I said, listen, I know when I got into the legislature, I said, this school has been well discriminated against, and I have firsthand experience. And I got some pictures from the library here, and from the laboratories, and from A&M, from Prairie View, and from Texas Southern. And I went up and made an appointment to go up to the Justice Department, United States Justice Department, and United States Department of Public Education. And I pled my case. They listened to me. But I think the thing that got them was this one thing. I told them that Prairie View was a part of the A&M system, and that the A&M system had a PUF fund And the PUF fund had, over a 20-year period, they had gotten an interest of $239 million over 20 years, and they had given Purview $1.5 million over the 20-year period. And that great disparity, along coupled with the things that I had talked about, the laboratories, the libraries, the condition of some of the facilities that are there, initiated the investigation, and they came down and they did the investigation. They found out everything that I told them was so factual, and they didn't release it because Carter was running for re-election, and Frank Irvin was the chair of the Board of Regents here at the University of Texas, and he told them, if you release it, Texas will vote against you. They voted against him anyway. He said, you'll lose Texas. But after he lost, that report was released. And the negotiations came about for the Office of Civil Rights for funding for those two schools, Texas Southern University and Prairie View. Governor Clements was governor. He said, I'd be damned if I let Senfronia be a part of this negotiation. So Wilhelmina Delco was selected over me to come in, and she was the chair of higher education and helped be a part of the negotiating team for those two universities, Prairie View and Texas Southern Universities. But I am proud to have been a radical who got it done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, certainly were, and absolutely incredible achievement. We in the LBJ School have a lot of graduates from Prairie View A&M and Texas Southern University, and so we thank you for the work that you did, and
thank you.
For those students as well to have access to incredible education and then come here and continue that on. I want to kind of continue that and follow up on something that we had a conversation of, and Dr. Pinlo Joseph also certainly talked about, was a little bit of the future of education in Texas, especially with school vouchers and the special education funds. Can you kind of talk more about what its impact, particularly in your district, what kind of impact will it have?
School vouchers, in my opinion, puts us back in a segregated society. And I think it cheats society. It cheats society, and it cheats the students. And here's how it does, each one of those. Every child is born in a society. The one thing that we want to do is to help that child develop its potential, not just for the child's sake, but for the sake of society. That's a child that we believe that if we help them develop their potential, they'll be able to be self-sustaining, and they can be contributors rather than liabilities to society. Secondly, if we undereducate, then society is cheated, because you're going to take care of that child and maybe his offsprings or his siblings or his dependents for the rest of your lives. And none of us in this room would ever be able to retire, because we're going to be taking care of them in the mental health or the penal system. And it costs more. When you send a person to prison for selling drugs, we're spending per year, we're spending right at $22,000 or $23,000 per person. But in public education, we're spending less than that per year per child. If we're able to enhance the learning of that child and they become independent and contribute to society, we broaden our knowledge and our huge hemisphere of wealth of education and exploration and research and the betterment of our lives through the education of that child. So we cheat ourselves by not providing quality education. And when you tell me that poor minority child is stuck in a school that they're not learning, and we're going to give them a voucher, they don't have a voucher, damn it, for a school bus to carry them over there. I guarantee you they don't have that. And their parents don't have the money to subsidize the difference between the cost of going to that private school and what that voucher is going to cost. And then, are we going to, as a society, are we going to benefit from that much? No, we're not. we're not going to benefit that much from vouchers. And it sounds good, but we have underfunded public education since its inception. Now, you know, some of y'all cook in here, and some of y'all some good cakes, cookers. There are some ingredients, if you leave out of that cake is not going to come out right. That's the same thing about public education. You got to put it in there. And there are a multitude of things that we need to do in public education. We've gotten smarter. We got psychologists now working in public schools. But a lot of children are coming to school with trauma. You know, if you're living in a home and every time you turn around and their mama calls you, "Come here, you little son of a bitch, you." You know, let me just tell you, that has an impact on you. Because you start feeling negative about yourself. That goes all through life. That person comes up, and then you wonder why is this person so violent, or why is this person so negative? They have been in such a negative environment. So we have to find ways in which this mental health has to expand in areas that we have to start to think about how do we get rid of and treat those traumas. But you cannot treat the trauma in the child without treating the trauma in the family. And it's a worthwhile investment, because you and I would be able to spend less money and get more benefits from the person if we're able to do something to help them. It is easier to build a child than to repair an adult.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for your honesty, your wisdom, and vulnerability with us today. It's been a joy to hear from you and learn from you this afternoon. Your journey and your career are truly inspiring. You've witnessed immense changes in our political landscape. And my final question, before we let the audience ask questions, as aforementioned, you've had a significant career in the Texas Legislature. In today's world, what goals do you want to achieve? What changes do you hope to see? And what advice would you offer our future policymakers here at the LBJ School?
I want to see a society created where all of us can enjoy and learn from each other, that we can have a society with good health care and good health care outcomes, that our children can come up feeling that they can reach for the stars, and they can do exploration, and they can live in a society where there's love and there's peace, and a society where people don't look at the color of your skin, but look at a God who created you and empowered you with knowledge and wisdom, integrity, ingenuity, and love and joy. And to be able to build this country as the greatest nation that it ever was, and to build this state. And when people come here, they know that they can get a good job, they can get their good education, good health care, good businesses can thrive, and people can enjoy the aesthetics of life, the beauty of life. I used to love walking around Ziegler Park, and the thing, I would start at 5:30 in the morning, and I make that round, and then finally when I come around, I saw that swan just peacefully gliding on the water. It was just so lovely, so peaceful. And to be able to say that I was a part of making society better as a human being, as a part of Texas, as a part of America. And no country is going to take us over and marginalize us. But we're going to continue to expand and expand and expand and become the greatest nation on the face of the earth, and make the one person proud of us, God.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, now we'll open it up for questions. If you want to, for anyone who has any questions.
Just raise your hand and the mic will come to you.
You in the black shirt with the sweater.
Thank you so much for speaking to us, Zora. I just want to ask you, how do you strategize in a Congress where you are in the minority?
This is what really happens in the legislature. We have Democrats and we have Republicans. We have liberals and we have conservatives. But when we work on the issue, we don't see it as a Republican or a Democrat issue. We work together to try to come up with the best solution at that particular time that we possibly can. And when you like people and you don't mind working with them and rolling your sleeves up, you can't always get that everything you wanted at one time, because sometimes I have to understand where they come from too. And all of us try to include those things in our strategies and in our work.
Thank you very much. So, sort of an inside question. You spoke of strategies. Any chance we can avoid a voucher bill this session?
A what?
A school voucher bill.
No, we cannot. They have the votes. Mm-hmm. But let me tell you what is important. We fund schools on average daily attendance, but the school is responsible for a finite number of students. And if a student doesn't come, they still got to hire that maid, they still got to hire that cafeteria worker, that teacher is going to still be there, and the cost is still going. So we're trying to see whether or not that we can encourage them to give them the monies allocated for the number of students that are assigned to that.
Just raise your hand, Mike will come to you.
And if you were an LBJ student or a former LBJ student, please let us know as well.
Jennifer, former LBJ student and Barbara Jordan chair as well, 2023. My question is about passing the first hate crime bill in Texas. How was that process?
Your question.
Passing the first hate crime bill, the James Byrd bill, just what was that like?
What is the question?
The hate crime bill?
Hate crime.
Yeah.
How the process was in getting Rick Perry to pass it?
It was a very a difficult bill to pass, not because my colleagues were not cooperative. Imagine passing a hate crime bill in a society where some people come from, and some things are acceptable and some things are not acceptable. And the thing that really hung the bill up was I wanted to add sexual orientation to the bill, and that was very difficult for a lot of my colleagues from rural Texas. I had a guy named Warren Chisholm from Pampa, Texas, and Warren was just we voted opposite to each other all the time. And one day I walked up to him one Thursday and I said, Warren, are you gonna be here this weekend? He said, yes. I said, I'm gonna be here this weekend, and I wonder whether or not that you and I can hammer out a definition for sexual orientation. He said, I think we can. He got with his group, and I got with our group, and we took from Thursday night to Sunday night, and we got a definition that we could both all live with. I asked him, I said, okay, we got this definition, and I don't need you to go and start saying that we got it. I just keep it under wrap. He said, okay. And I says, and I'll recognize you, and we'll put the amendment on. So the day of the hearing, of the floor debate, I have this debate on the floor, and he gets on the back mic and he says, I have an amendment to your bill. Would you accept it? And I said, bring it down. So he came down with the amendment. I already knew what it was because we done worked on it together. And we stand around, podium just, chewing the fat, and everybody was just, they knew that we were arch enemies, in terms of our beliefs and philosophies. And so I said, okay, now we done bullshitted enough. Let's go on and put the amendment on, And so he offered the amendment, and I said I accept it. And the body was just ecstatic because they just knew I was going to say no. The speaker said, do you accept the amendment? I paused for a few minutes, more than a few minutes, and I said, I'll accept the amendment. And that's how we got it done. Well, the first time we got to pass, it went to the Senate, and it didn't pass because George W. Bush was going to run for president, and he did not want that bill on his watch. So it was delayed until the following session. And in the following session, we passed the bill, and we got it signed into law. Rick Perry was the governor at that particular time. Every bill like that has a story, y'all.
Hello, I'm Ken Flippin, and I am a former LBJ student, and we know each other well. Dean Thompson, thank you so much for all of your service. My question involves some of the folks that I work for as a policy consultant at the legislature, is like the U.S. Green Building Council and the League of Conservation Voters. And one of my biggest concerns this legislative session is that while we're seeing some opportunity to focus on things like water infrastructure, my concern is that we've learned and we know that environmental justice is more of an issue that has a lot of racial disparity implications. But in this environment where DEI and everything is, such a curse word and to be avoided, I'm concerned about the ability to get funds that are going to be coming in some cases for things like water infrastructure aimed at the communities that actually need it the most, which are often minority communities that have had a lot of pollution and infrastructure problems put on them because of a long history. And just wondering what your thoughts are about an opportunity to advocate for those communities in this current environment.
I'm going to continue to advocate for those communities, but if Ken, there are several hot spots in Houston where the water has become very contaminated in persons in geographical areas, really Barbara Jordan community, where Barbara Jordan grew up. They have contamination in the water to such a degree that many people have cancer. Large swaths of people have cancer in that particular area. And then we're finding, because of the creosote plant down further, there are problems with that. I think that those kind of issues are going to continue to drive the need and the investment that we're going to continue to have monies available for those particular projects to be investigated and also to be worked toward solutions.
Thank you so much for your time. My name is Brianna McBride. I'm also an alum of the LBJ School and former co-chair of the Barbara Jordan National Forum. My question is related to sustaining the work. What have you learned from your career and the longevity of your career, and what advice would you have for advocates such as myself and other people who want to keep pushing but are feeling like we're hitting a wall or don't really know what it will take to actually sustain the long-term fight that we're ahead and that we're against? What advice would you have for us?
I think I can answer your question probably within 1 or 2 sentences. Freedom is something that you fight for every day of your life. Because if you don't fight for it, it has a tendency to pick up unnecessary baggage. And you want to make sure that you don't have those unnecessary baggage attaching itself as liabilities to it. So it's something that you fight for to make sure that it's available and it's there for everybody. That's the reason why it is so significant for us to come together to continue to make our state a great state, our country a great country. Because we know as a people, we know what freedom really means. We have gone to wars and fought for freedoms and things of that nature. So, do you get tired? Yes. But do you give up? No. You have to always continue to fight, always continue to be vigilant. Because once you go to sleep at the switch, things happen and they creep in, and it's a bigger problem to try to eliminate them then.
Thank you so much for that answer. We have time for one last question.
It's a lady back there got her hand up.
I was wondering your advice for regular folks who want to make an impact at the Texas legislature.
What was the question? Can you repeat your question again?
Sure. Your advice for regular folks who want to make an impact at the Texas Legislature this session.
Who want to make an impact in the Texas legislature?
What impact?
How can regular folks make an impact at the Texas Legislature this session?
There are probably some legislation that you may be interested in, that you may want to go and work or contribute to positive or negative to it, and that's how you can do it. That's one of the ways that you can do it. There are groups, all pro and cons on issues. You can also join those groups and participate with them as well. You don't have to start from scratch.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much again for your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.